Imagine a serene pond, its glassy surface hiding depths of unimaginable terror. What lurks beneath the murk? What whispers from the reeds at night? Welcome to a chilling collection of true, scary stories centered around ponds, places of beauty by day, but gateways to nightmares after dark. These accounts, drawn from real experiences shared by survivors, will make you rethink that peaceful fishing spot or evening stroll. We've selected 5 tales for their shocking variety. Ghostly apparitions, cursed waters and horrors that drag you under. Stick around if you dare, but remember, some secrets are better left submerged. Story for 1. The Thing Beneath the Surface. It was one of those lazy summer afternoons in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where the heat shimmers off the pavement and the air buzzes with cicadas. Mark and his wife, Lisa, had made it a habit to take their toddler daughter, Emily, to a small local lake. More of a pond, really, nestled behind a cluster of homes. It wasn't much. A muddy shore lined with cattails, water lilies dotting the surface like forgotten jewels, and a depth that never seemed too intimidating. They'd splash around, build sand castles from the gritty bank, and watch dragonflies skim the water. For Mark, it was a slice of simple joy amid the chaos of parenthood. But on that fateful day in late August, everything changed. Lisa, always the adventurous one, decided to wade in deeper while Mark stayed on the shore, cradling Emily in his arms. The water was warm, almost inviting, but with that opaque green tint that hid whatever lay below. "Come on in, the water's fine," Lisa called back, laughing as she ventured out to where the pond dropped off slightly, the bottom turning soft and silty under her feet. Mark smiled, bouncing Emily on his hip, but something nagged at him. The way the light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows that danced unnaturally on the surface. Lisa was about knee-deep when it happened. Her foot sank into the mud, and she felt something off. Not the usual squish of sediment or a stray rock. It was yielding, almost fleshy, like stepping on a waterlogged sponge. She shifted her weight, probing with her toes, and that's when the horror struck. The texture gave way to something rounded, hollow. An eye socket? Her mind reeled as her foot traced what felt like the bridge of a nose, cold and unyielding beneath the slime. Panic surged through her. She yanked her leg back, stumbling in the water, her scream piercing the afternoon calm. "Mark, there's something down there. It felt like a face." Mark's blood ran cold. He set Emily down gently on a blanket and rushed to the water's edge, heart pounding. "What? Are you sure? Maybe it was just a branch or something." But Lisa was already scrambling out, her face pale as death, water dripping from her trembling legs. She described it in hushed, frantic whispers, the gyve of skin, the curve of features, as if a body was buried just beneath the surface, staring up blindly from the depths. Emily started crying, sensing the tension, and Mark felt a chill despite the heat. He considered diving in to check, but the pond suddenly seemed alive, ripples spreading without wind, a faint bubbles rising like breaths from below. They packed up in a hurry, Lisa insisting they leave immediately. "I swear, Mark, it was human. I felt bones." On the drive home, they tried to rationalize it. A dead animal, perhaps a large fish, or even a mannequin dumped by pranksters, but doubt gnawed at them. That night, sleep evaded Lisa. She tossed and turned, haunted by visions of a submerged corpse, its empty eyes following her. Mark scrolled through local news on his phone, half expecting nothing. But there it was, a missing persons alert from 2 days prior. A young boy, 8 years old, had vanished while playing near the pond. His family lived just a street over. He'd been last seen chasing a ball toward the water. The next morning, the story exploded. Local news crews swarmed the area. Body of missing child found in neighborhood pond. Divers had recovered the remains late the previous evening, bloated and entangled in weeds. Cause of death ruled as accidental drowning. The report claimed the body was discovered on the far side, away from where Mark and Lisa had been swimming. But the pond was tiny, no more than a football field across. How could it not have drifted? Lisa broke down, convinced her foot had pressed into the boy's face, desecrating his final resting place. What if he was still fresh? What if I felt him before the water took him completely? Whispers spread through the neighborhood like ripples. Neighbors shared their own eerie tales. Strange lights bobbing over the pond at night, like will-o'-the-wisps leading the unwary astray. One elderly woman claimed she'd seen a small figure standing on the bank years ago, dripping wet, calling for his mother before vanishing into the mist. Mark and Lisa avoided the pond after that, but the nightmares persisted. Lisa would wake screaming, feeling phantom hands grabbing her ankles from under the bed, pulling her down into inky blackness. Mark heard splashes outside their window on rainy nights, as if something was crawling from the depths to their doorstep. Weeks later, curiosity and guilt drove Mark back alone at dusk. The pond looked innocent, but as he approached, the air grew thick, heavy with the scent of decay. He shone his flashlight into the water, and for a split second, he swore he saw a pale face staring back, eyes wide and accusing, mouth open in a silent scream. Bubbles rose, bursting with a wet pop, and a voice, faint, childlike, whispered, "You stepped on me." He bolted, heart exploding in his chest, vowing never to return. To this day, the pond remains, a deceptively calm mirror reflecting the sky. But locals know better. They warn newcomers, don't swim alone, don't linger after dark, because beneath the surface, the lost linger, waiting for a foot to brush their cold skin, pulling you into their eternal embrace. Mark and Lisa moved away, but the memory clings like mud. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Lisa feels that hollow give under her soul, a reminder that some horrors are all too real, hidden just out of sight in the places we least expect. Story number 2, The Whispering Reeds. Nestled in the heart of rural Vermont, where the forests press close and the air hangs heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth, lay an old mill pond known to locals as Blackwater Hollow. It wasn't on any maps, hidden down a winding dirt road that most outsiders never found. For generations, families like the Harrisons had lived nearby, drawn to the area's solitude, but wary of the pond's reputation. Old-timers spoke in hushed tones about the whispers, voices that rose from the reeds at night, calling names, sharing secrets, driving the unwary mad. But to young siblings Alex and Jamie, it was just a forbidden adventure spot, a place to skip stones and dare each other to swim despite their parents' stern warnings. It started innocently enough one crisp autumn afternoon in 2018. Alex, 14 and bold, convinced 12-year-old Jamie to sneak out after school. "Mom and Dad are at work. They'll never know," he said, slinging a backpack with snacks over his shoulder. The pond was a mile through the woods, its surface a perfect mirror of the fiery leaves overhead. Reeds taller than a man encircled it, swaying gently in the breeze, their dry rustle like pages turning in an ancient book. The water was inky black, fed by underground springs that kept it unnaturally cold year-round. Legends claimed it was bottomless, a gateway to forgotten caves where lost souls wandered. They reached the bank as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the water. Jamie hesitated, remembering Grandma's tales. The reeds talk because they're the tongues of the drowned. They lure you in with your own desires. But Alex laughed it off, stripping to his shorts and wading in. See? Nothing but mud and frogs. The bottom was spongy, sucking at his feet, but he pushed on, diving under and resurfacing with a whoop. Jamie joined reluctantly, the chill biting her skin like needles. They splashed and laughed, the echoes bouncing off the trees. But as dusk fell, the mood shifted. The reeds began to murmur. At first, it was subtle, a soft susurrus blending with the wind. But then words formed, faint and fragmented. Alex, come deeper. Alex froze mid-splash, water dripping from his hair. Did you hear that? Jamie nodded, eyes wide, scanning the swaying stalks. It's just the wind, dummy. But the whispers grew insistent, calling their names, mimicking their parents' voices. Jamie, sweetheart, swim to me. A chill unrelated to the water crept up their spines. Something brushed Alex's leg, not a fish, but deliberate, like fingers grazing his calf. He yelped, thrashing toward shore, but the mud held fast, pulling him down as if hands gripped his ankles. Panic set in. Jamie screamed, lunging to help, but the water churned around them, bubbles rising in foul bursts that smelled of rot and decay. The whispers turned to laughter, mocking and hollow, echoing from all sides. Stay with us. Forever. Alex broke free, gasping, and they scrambled onto the bank, clothes sodden, hearts racing. Looking back, the reeds parted slightly, revealing glimpses of pale shapes beneath the surface. Faces, limbs. They bolted home, bursting through the door just as their parents returned, babbling about voices and touches. Their mom, pale-faced, sat them down. I told you never to go there. Your great uncle drowned in that pond when he was your age. They said he heard calls too, his dead sister's voice begging him to join her. The family had hushed it up, but records showed a string of disappearances, fishermen vanishing mid-cast, hikers last seen near the bank. A local historian claimed the pond was cursed by an old mill accident in the 1800s, where workers were crushed under collapsing timbers and dragged into the water, their spirits trapped in the reeds, envious of the living. That night, the whispers followed them. Alex woke to scratching at his window, peering out to see reeds, impossibly, sprouting from the lawn, swaying toward the house. Alex, we miss you. He slammed the curtain shut, but sleep brought nightmares, sinking into blackness, faces of the drowned pressing close, mouths open in eternal screams, hands pulling him under. Jamie fared worse. She found wet footprints leading from her bed to the door, muddy with black silt that matched the pond's bottom. Desperate, their parents called a priest for a blessing, but he refused after visiting the site. Evil clings there like roots in soil. Best to leave it be. Instead, they installed floodlights and alarms, but the intrusion escalated. One stormy evening, as thunder rolled, the power cut out. In the darkness, the whispers infiltrated the house. Jamie, Alex, Play with us." A knock at the back door, slow, deliberate, peeking through. They saw a figure, sodden, reed entwined, water pooling at its feet. It raised a hand, beckoning, eyes glinting like wet stones. The family fled to a motel, but the pond's pull was relentless. Alex began sleepwalking, found one morning at the edge of the woods, murmuring responses to unheard voices. Jamie drew pictures obsessively, twisted figures emerging from the water, reeds like tentacles wrapping around limbs. Research uncovered more horrors. A diver in the 90s who explored the depths, surfacing raving about a city of bones and below, chambers filled with skeletons reaching out. He vanished days later, his boat adrift on the pond. In a bid for closure, the Harrisons returned with authorities to drain part of the pond. What they found chilled the community. Human remains, dozens, some ancient, others recent, tangled in roots and reeds. Among them, artifacts from the mill, rusted gears, personal effects, and a journal fragment. The water speaks. It promises peace but delivers only hunger. Forensic analysis suggested foul play in some cases, but most were ruled accidental, the pond's treacherous undercurrents blamed. The family moved across state lines, but the whispers echo in quiet moments. Alex hears them in the shower drain, Jamie in the rustle of curtains. They avoid water bodies, the sight of still surfaces triggering panic. Locals boarded up the road to Blackwater Hollow, but some say on moonless nights, the reeds still call, seeking new voices to join the chorus below. If you ever hear your name on the wind near a pond, run. Don't look back. The drowned are lonely, and their embrace is forever cold. Story Thursforder 3, The Cursed Reflection. In the rolling hills of southern England, where ancient stone circles dot the landscape and folklore clings like mist, there exists a small forgotten pond called Mirror Mere. Tucked away in the grounds of an abandoned estate, it's surrounded by overgrown willows whose branches dip into the water like weeping fingers. The pond's name comes from its unnaturally still surface, which reflects the world above with eerie perfection. No ripples, no distortions. Even on windy days, locals avoid it, whispering of a curse from the 17th century. A witch drowned there during the trials, her final words binding her spirit to the depths, turning the water into a portal for the vengeful dead. But for urban explorer and amateur historian Elena, it was the perfect spot for a solo expedition in the summer of 2022. Elena had heard the tales online, on forums dedicated to haunted sites. Don't look too long into the water, one user warned. You'll see things that aren't yours. Intrigued rather than deterred, she packed her camera, flashlight, and a notebook, driving out at dawn to beat the heat. The estate was a ruin, crumbling walls covered in ivy. The path to the pond choked with brambles that snagged her jeans like tiny claws. As she emerged into the clearing, the mere lay before her, a flawless sheet of glass mirroring the blue sky and fluffy clouds. It was beautiful, almost hypnotic, the willows framing it like a painting. "This is it," she murmured, setting up her tripod by the edge. She started with photos, capturing the reflections. A bird overhead, duplicated perfectly below, as if flying through an inverted world. But as the sun climbed, a subtle unease settled in. The air was too still, the silence oppressive. No bird song, no insect hum, just the faint drip of dew from leaves. Elena leaned over the bank, peering into the depths. The water was crystal clear near the surface, but darkened abruptly. as if swallowing light. Her reflection stared back, sharp and lifelike. But something was off. Her eyes in the water seemed wider, fearful, while her real face smiled. Shaking it off as an optical illusion, she decided to test the legends. "If there's anyone here, show yourself," she said aloud, feeling foolish. The words hung in the air. Then the surface trembled. Not a ripple, but a vibration, like a drum skin struck softly. Her reflection blurred, reforming into something else. A woman's face, pale and gaunt, with long hair floating like seaweed, mouth open in a silent wail. Elena gasped, stumbling back, but when she looked again, it was gone. Just her own startled expression. Heart racing, she laughed nervously. Trick of the light, must be. But curiosity won. She knelt closer, dipping a finger into the water. It was frigid, numbing her skin instantly, and as she stirred, whispers bubbled up, indistinct at first, then clearer. Names, pleas, accusations. "Help me, betrayed, drown them all." The voices layered, a chorus of anguish rising from the depths. Elena yanked her hand out, water dripping like blood, and noticed her reflection lagging. It remained still while she moved, then slowly, deliberately, raised a hand to beckon her closer. Panic flickered, but she pressed on, recording video. "This is Mirror, and something weird is happening." As she spoke, the reflection changed again. Now it showed her, but older, wrinkled, eyes hollow with despair. Behind the reflected her, shadowy figures gathered, spectral forms in period clothing, faces twisted in rage. One stepped forward, a woman in a tattered gown, pointing accusingly. Elena's real hand trembled, the camera shaking, but she couldn't look away. The whispers intensified. "Join us. See the truth." Compelled, she leaned in further, nose inches from the surface. The water's chill breath fogged her lens, and suddenly, her reflection lunged, hands bursting from the mirror, cold and clammy, grabbing her wrists. She screamed, pulling back with all her strength, but the grip was iron, nails digging into her flesh. The pond's surface bulged, as if something massive was rising. Visions flooded her mind, flashes of the witch's trial, torches, jeers, the plunge into icy water, lungs burning as she sank, cursing her tormentors with her last breath. "All who gaze shall see their end," the voice echoed in her head. Elena twisted free, falling backward onto the grass, scrapes burning her arms. The hands receded, slapping the water with a splash that sent ripples racing. The first she'd seen. Gasping, she grabbed her gear and ran, branches whipping her face, the whispers chasing her. "Come back, you're one of us now." Back at her car, she checked the footage, static at the key moments, but audio captured the voices clearly, overlapping in agony. That night in her apartment miles away, the curse manifested. Every reflective surface taunted her. Mirrors showed the witch's face overlaid on hers. Windows at dusk revealed crowds of ghosts pressing against the glass. She smashed a mirror, cutting her hand, but the shards still whispered. Sleep brought nightmares, drowning in mirror, bodies piling below, their eyes reflecting her terror. She researched frantically. Historical records confirmed the witch, Agnes Blackwood, executed for poisoning the village well. Survivors claimed her spirit haunted the pond, dragging souls through reflections to join her coven of the damned. Elena's health deteriorated. She aged rapidly, hair graying, skin sallow, as if the mirror was siphoning her life. Friends noticed, but she isolated, fearing she'd pull them in. One evening, alone, she filled her bathtub, staring into the water. Agnes appeared, smiling. "See your fate." The reflection showed Elena drowning, hands pulling her under, in a trance. She submerged her head, water filling her lungs, but snapped out, coughing, realizing the curse's pull. Desperate, she returned to the mere at midnight, armed with salt and sage from occult forums. The pond glowed faintly, bioluminescent algae perhaps, or spectral light. "Release me," she shouted, tossing salt into the water. It hissed, steam rising, and the surface boiled. Agnes's form emerged, half submerged, screeching. "You gazed too long." Hands shot out again, but Elena burned the sage, chanting a banishment she'd found. The spirit writhed, dissolving into foam, the whispers fading to silence. The curse lifted, or so it seemed. Elena's youth returned gradually, but scars remained. Literal ones on her wrists, psychic ones in her soul. She warns others online. Mirror isn't a legend, it's a trap. Your reflection might not be your own. Locals report the pond still as ever, but on certain nights, bubbles rise, carrying faint calls. If you visit, avert your eyes. The cursed don't like being ignored, and they wait patiently for the next curious soul to lean in, too close, ready to swap places in the blink of a reflected eye. Story number 4. The Bottomless Pool. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, where the hills roll like ancient spines and rivers carve hidden valleys, there's a pond locals call Devil's Throat. It's not marked on any trail maps, accessible only by an overgrown path that winds through thickets of rhododendron and laurel. The water is perpetually dark, stained by tannins from decaying leaves, and rumors swirl that it's bottomless, a fissure straight to hell, where the earth's crust cracked eons ago. Fishermen avoid it, claiming lines snap without reason, and those who dare cast often reel in nightmares instead of base. But for Jake, a seasoned angler down on his luck after losing his job at the coal mine in 2019, it was a desperate last resort for some peace and maybe a meal. Jake had heard the stories from his grandfather. "That pond swallows more than fish, boy." Swallowed a whole search party back in the 50s looking for a lost hiker. The tale went that the hiker, a young woman named Clara, vanished during a storm, her screams echoing across the hills before silence fell. Divers sent down came up empty, one raving about arms in the dark, before he quit diving altogether. Jake dismissed it as moonshine-fueled folklore, packing his tackle box and heading out at dawn, the mist still clinging to the ground like a shroud. The pond appeared suddenly, a black eye in the forest, about 50 yards across with steep banks plunging straight down. No birds perched nearby, no frogs croaked, just an oppressive quiet broken only by the occasional drip from overhanging branches. Jake set up on a weathered dock, little more than rotting planks nailed to stumps, and baited his hook with a wriggling worm. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, casting his line. It sank quickly, the bobber vanishing into the gloom. He settled back, popping a beer, letting the solitude wash over him. Minutes ticked by, then an hour. The sun climbed, but the pond remained shadowed, as if light feared to touch it. Jake dozed lightly, dreams flickering of underwater caverns filled with glowing eyes. A sharp tug woke him, the rod bending nearly double, lines screaming off the reel. "Whoa, big one," he yelled, adrenaline surging. He braced his feet, reeling hard, but whatever was below fought like a demon, pulling him forward inch by inch. The dock creaked ominously, wood splintering under the strain. Sweat beaded on his brow as he glimpsed something in the depths. A pale flash, not scales, but skin. Human skin? Panic edged in. "Cut the line, you fool," his mind screamed, but curiosity and the thrill held him. The thing thrashed, sending waves lapping against the bank, water churning white. Then voices, muffled, garbled, rising with bubbles. "Help! Pull me up!" Jake's heart stuttered. It sounded like a woman, desperate, drowning. "Clara!" he whispered, the legend crashing back. He reeled faster, muscles burning, and the surface broke, a hand emerging, fingers splayed, nails broken and caked with mud. Not a fish, but a person, clinging to his hook embedded in flesh. Horror gripped him as a head followed. Matted hair, eyes milky white, mouth gasping like a landed trout. The face was decayed, features softened by years underwater, but recognizable from old photos he'd seen in the local library. Clara, missing for decades. "Thank you," she rasped, voice like grinding gravel as her other arm flailed, grabbing the dock's edge. Jake screamed, dropping the rod, but the line tangled around his ankle, yanking him as she pulled herself up. Her skin sloughed off in sheets, revealing bone beneath, yet she moved with unnatural strength, crawling onto the planks. The dock buckled under their weight, tilting precariously. Jake kicked free, scrambling backward, but she lunged, cold fingers wrapping around his leg. "Join me. It's so cold down there." Her touch was icy, sapping his warmth, visions flooding his mind. Clara's last moments, slipping on wet rocks, plunging into the abyss, the water closing over her as she clawed futilely. But deeper, horrors awaited. A labyrinth of submerged tunnels filled with others, lost souls from centuries past, native shamans cursing the land, miners trapped in floods, all chained by the pond's insatiable hunger. They whispered promises of company, pulling the living down to swell their ranks. Jake fought, grabbing a loose board and swinging it like a bat. It connected with a sickening crack, her head lolling, but she didn't release. "The pull never stops," she gurgled, water spilling from her lips. Desperate, he severed the line with his knife, the hook still buried in her palm. She slipped back, fingers dragging furrows in the wood, before vanishing with a splash that echoed like laughter. The pond stilled instantly, as if nothing had happened. Jake fled, thorns tearing his clothes, arriving home battered and babbling. His wife called the sheriff, who organized a search. Divers went down, equipped with lights and cameras, but found no bottom. Just endless dark, equipment failing at 200 feet. One surfaced early, pale and shaking. Something grabbed my fin. Felt like hands. No body was recovered, but Jake's rod washed up days later, line intact. Hook bent straight, as if released, not broken. The experience shattered Jake. He quit fishing, sold his gear, and took a job in town, far from water. But the pull lingered. At night, he'd wake to dripping sounds, finding wet footprints leading from his bed to the door. Showers became ordeals, the drain gurgling with voices. "Come back, we're waiting." Therapy helped little. Doctors called it PTSD, but Jake knew better. He researched obsessively. Geological surveys hinted at underground aquifers connecting to caves miles away, perhaps explaining the bottomless myth. Historical accounts detailed similar incidents. A Civil War deserter dragged under, his cries heard for days. A child in the 80s vanishing mid-swim, body never found. One full moon night, the urge overwhelmed him. Jake drove back, standing at the edge, the pond's surface like oil under the lunar glow. "What do you want?" he shouted. Ripples formed, a hand breaking through, not Clara's, but his grandfather's, long dead from a supposed heart attack while fishing elsewhere. "Family reunion," the voice bubbled. Jake stepped in, the water welcoming, pulling him down into the cold embrace. Search parties found his truck, but no trace of him. Locals sealed the path with warnings, but adventurers still seek Devil's Throat. They cast lines, tempted by tales of monster fish, ignoring the whispers. If you feel a tug too strong, cut loose, because what's below isn't hungry for bait. It's hungry for you, and the bottomless pull is eternal, drawing souls into the dark where the lost forever drift, calling for more to join the depths. Story number 5, The Ghosts of Deadman's Pond. In the frost-bitten wilds of Newfoundland, Canada, where the Atlantic winds howl like banshees and the landscape clings to tales of tragedy, lies a body of water ominously named Deadman's Pond. It's not a grand lake, just a modest expanse ringed by scraggly pines and rocky shores. But its history is steeped in sorrow, drawing ghost hunters and skeptics alike. The pond earned its grim moniker from a series of drownings dating back to the 1800s. But the most infamous incident occurred on Boxing Day, 1869, a tale that has chilled locals for generations. For modern-day visitor Sarah, a journalist chasing supernatural stories in 2023, it became a personal nightmare that blurred the line between legend and lethal reality. Sarah had stumbled upon the story while researching haunted sites for her blog. Accounts varied, but the core was consistent. On that fateful December day, 3 young men, brothers John and William McGrath, along with their friend Thomas Walsh, set out to skate on the pond's fresh ice. The weather was crisp, the pond frozen solid after a cold snap, and laughter echoed as they glided across the glassy surface. But joy turned to horror when the ice cracked beneath them, a thunderous snap swallowing the trio into the frigid depths. Rescuers arrived too late. The bodies weren't recovered until spring thaw, bloated and unrecognizable, tangled in weeds like forgotten fishing nets. Locals whispered that their spirits never left. Fishermen reported eerie lights dancing over the water on winter nights, like lanterns searching for lost souls. Others heard cries for help carried on the wind, only to find the pond deserted. One tale spoke of a ghostly skater, a shadowy figure circling endlessly, inviting the living to join the dance. Those who accepted were never seen again. Sarah, ever the rationalist, dismissed it as folklore born of grief. But the pond's pull was irresistible. This could be my big break, she thought, packing her recorder, camera, and thermal gear for a solo overnight vigil. She arrived at dusk, the sun dipping behind the hills, painting the sky in blood-red hues. The pond was a frozen mirror, snow-dusted banks crunching under her boots. No one else around. Tourists avoided it in winter, and locals steered clear after dark. Setting up camp on the shore, she built a small fire, its flames flickering uncertainly in the gathering cold. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, stars piercing the black velvet sky like accusatory eyes. Sarah began her recordings. December 26, 2023, 154 years to the day. If the ghosts are here, show yourselves. At first, silence reigned, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the creak of settling ice. Sarah scanned with her thermal camera, spotting nothing but cooling rocks. Boredom crept in. She sipped hot coffee, scrolling through old newspaper clippings on her phone. One detail stood out. Witnesses to the 1869 drowning claimed the ice was thick enough for horses, yet it gave way suddenly, as if pulled from below. Superstition blamed a curse from an earlier incident, a shipwreck survivor who drowned himself there in despair, vowing to claim company in death. Midnight passed. Sarah dozed by the fire, dreams weaving of underwater shadows, hands reaching up through cracks. A sharp crack jolted her awake, not a dream, but real, echoing across the pond. Heart pounding, she grabbed her flashlight, beam slicing the darkness. The ice groaned, faint lines spiderwebbing from the center. "Hello?" she called, voice trembling. No answer, but then skating sounds, soft scrapes like blades carving figure eights, growing closer. Her thermal lit up, 3 cold spots, humanoid, gliding in unison. "Oh God," she whispered, camera rolling. The figures manifested faintly, translucent forms in outdated coats, faces pale and pleading. One extended a hand, beckoning, "Join us, the water's fine." Sarah backed away, but the ground softened, snow melting unnaturally, revealing muddy banks that sucked at her boots. The air filled with whispers, names of the drowned, pleas for rescue, laughter turning to screams. Panic surged. She turned to run, but her foot slipped, plunging through thin ice at the edge. She hadn't noticed how close she'd camped. Freezing water engulfed her leg, numbness spreading like venom. Hands, icy, insistent, grabbed her ankle from below, pulling with inhuman strength. Visions assaulted her. The 1869 plunge, lungs burning, brothers clinging in vain. Earlier victims, a parade of sorrow stretching back centuries. "No," Sarah screamed, clawing at the bank, nails breaking in the frozen earth. The ghosts circled overhead, their skates etching runes in the ice, symbols of entrapment, locals later identified as old Gaelic curses. Sarah's recorder captured it all, her gasps, the splashes, ethereal voices chanting, "One more for the depths." Strength failing, she remembered a tip from a forum: iron repels spirits. She fumbled for her multi-tool, the steel blade glinting. Swinging wildly, she stabbed at the water. A howl erupted, the grip loosening just enough. She hauled herself out, sopping wet, hypothermia nipping at her edges. Stumbling to her car, she blasted the heat, driving blindly to the nearest town. Hospital records confirmed frostbite and hallucinations from exposure, but the footage told another story. Clear audio of voices not her own, visuals of orbs darting across the frame. Posting it online exploded her blog, but at a cost. Nightmares of drowning, wet footprints in her hallway, whispers through vents. You escaped. But we wait. Research deepened the terror. Deadman's Pond claimed more lives post-1869, a child in 1920, fishermen in the 40s, even a ghost hunter in 1998 who vanished, his gear found floating. Geologists blamed unstable peat bogs undermining the ice, but locals knew better. Sarah returned once, with a priest for an exorcism. As salt scattered over the water, bubbles rose, screams echoing before silence fell. The pond froze smoother than before, but on Boxing Day anniversaries, cracks form, inviting the unwary. Sarah quit chasing ghosts, warning others. Deadman's Pond isn't haunted, it's hungry. The drowned don't rest, they recruit. If you visit, stay on solid ground. Listen for skates in the wind. Feel a tug at your feet, run. Because beneath the ice, the ghosts of Deadman's Pond skate eternal, their circle incomplete, Always room for one more soul to break through and join the frigid waltz. Discover hubpages.com. And with that chilling finale, we've surfaced 5 true scary stories from the depths of ponds around the world, places where tranquility masks terror, and the water holds secrets that pull you under. Whether it's bodies beneath the surface, whispering reeds, cursed reflections, bottomless abysses, or ghostly skaters, these tales remind us, respect the water, for it remembers all who enter. If these stories sent shivers down your spine, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more spine-tingling content, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Got your own pond horror or eerie encounter? Share it in the comments below. I might feature it in a future video. Stay safe out there, avoid those murky edges, and we'll see you next time for more true scares. Sweet dreams, or not.